All right, everybody, welcome to the Messengers Podcast. I am Chris Searles.
And I'm Rob Seifert.
Today we're going to talk a little bit about text message marketing, which is a little bit of a hot button topic, I think, for a lot of people. I think it's kind of weird, right? As a society, we went through a very long period of time where we actively published our private information in the phone book. You know, there was nobody that... I mean, it was strange if you had somebody that had an unlisted number, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And super annoying because there was no other way to find out what that person's phone number was.
Right.
I remember, growing up, if I needed to contact people on a soccer team or a baseball team, and everything was in the phone book, or even just my friends, just to call a friend and you didn't remember their phone number right away.
Right.
As a phone book, and so we kind of went from that, where people purposely published all their information to now if your phone number and address was on the internet somewhere, I think people would freak out.
Yeah. I think there's almost like a separation with the generations in terms of the way it's dealt with. I mean, it's so much easier to get in touch with a younger generation than an older generation now because there is no more phone book.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people aren't on social media and there's no other reference.
Yeah. And I think the cell phone now has become like this protected, controlled. I can control how people contact me and when and through what medium. Right. And that's why I think text message marketing in general, I know even from my standpoint, I had a negative connotation to it for sure. It took a long time for us to kind of come around to, or for me to come around to text marketing because I don't really want to get a lot of those texts. I mean, there might be one or two, brands that I could think about wanting that kind of a relationship with, but for the most part, no, not really. But
I understand that. I mean, I had hesitation too. Probably about a little over a year ago, I signed up for the service at Timberland, and I hesitated. I wanted the discount that they were offering. Because I'm all about the discount, but my assumption was that I was going to receive phone calls and that I was going to receive an unruly amount of text messages because it wasn't really explained in the opt-in what I was signing up for. Yeah. And it's these misconceptions, I think, are what causing people to hesitate to sign up for these texting services.
Yeah, and I guess in case it hasn't become apparent, we are now fully on board with text marketing, done the right way. I mean, obviously, but to the point where we've even built out our own service to offer text marketing to our clients and kind of help integrate that with the rest of their marketing campaigns. But and we're pushing it hard in a big way because it really it's kind of amazing. The response rates and the results are truly incredible. From what we look at, we have just 2 days ago, I actually did a screen cap. I did a recording of a video where opened our software on one side with the message we were about to send, and I opened the Google Analytics live view of the website that we were driving people to, and to watch like
the spike,
hit the button, and then just watching the numbers climb by the second is unbelievable. And you're not talking about somebody that's got 2 million people on a text list. I mean, it is something that we are fully on board with and fully committed to. But like you're talking about, there's an education gap that kind of needs to be bridged in terms of getting people to subscribe. Some people have, obviously we're not the first ones to do this, and so there is a portion of the market that's well educated enough to understand the value that they're going to get out of it.
Yeah, a lot that's not, though,
Yeah, and especially when it comes to marketers and business owners themselves,
Both, right, yeah.
Because you tend to find a lot, and that's what we are finding is one of the objections are, I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want to get those messages. And really the simple answer is, well, then it's not for you. But you don't market your business for you. You market it for the people that are going to buy from you. And text marketing is not for everybody. As far as receiving text messages, it's not for everybody. Not everybody wants that. But the reason not everybody wants it is the reason why it's so incredibly successful, because it's so interruptive to somebody's day that if you can find a customer that is willing to engage with you on that level and is willing to give you that kind of permission to interrupt their day because they want to hear from you that badly, or they want what you're offering, or what the value you're providing in those text messages is enough for them to say, yes, I'm going to get that notification on my phone, I'm going to pick it up, I'm going to look at what you had to say, and I'm going to make a decision as to whether or not I'm going to engage with that or not right away, and I'm good with that. It's why it's so successful, but it's also why there's a kind of a connotation to it that it's interruptive, and for the people that don't want to be interrupted with those things, assume everybody else feels that way, and that's really not the case.
Yeah, well, I think it just has to do with what you say and how often you say it too. I mean, that's a big part of it. You don't want to be that disruptive, and I mean, it's part of what I was talking about before. My fear was that I was going to get as many text messages as I do emails.
Yeah, well, and that's a big comparison when we look at pushing that service or selling that service or recommending that service is to email.
Yeah.
And email has kind of gotten to a point where it's not that there's no value there. We still use email. We feel free, please go sign up for our email lists. We send emails out. We promote this podcast via email every week.
Right.
So it certainly is there, and it certainly still has its place. And it doesn't mean that texting is going to has taken that over, but there's also an extent, nobody's email read rates are increasing on the whole. Nobody's engagement rates are increasing really in email. And it's because it's just gotten to the point where the spam folder in email now, or, your whatever you kind of call your junk mail folder, even Google, Gmail even filters those out into a different tab now for you, so you don't have to do it yourself, because they understand the sheer volume of emails that people get these days. You just can't have all that stuff in one place anymore.
Right.
And it's really kind of taken over. We talked about it in a previous episode as far as why we're pushing people back into direct mail, because your email inbox is so crazy crowded.
Right.
Where your mailbox used to be that way 20 years ago, 30 years ago,
A lot less,
but it's not anymore. And so there's opportunity there. There's a lot of opportunity there to be a place where a lot of people aren't. And email it offered that opportunity for a long time, and it just doesn't anymore. Everybody is sending emails these days.
Right.
But texting offers that same opportunity to be somewhere that not everybody else is, and to do it in a way where you're working with engaged consumers, because they've gone out of their way to give you that consent to be that disruptive to their day.
Yeah. Well, those response rates are, I know you look at the statistics behind the computer, but just reading them, that's really, what kind of got me excited to talk to customers about it too. I mean, I think it's just a matter of trying to establish how it can apply to different businesses that we've kind of been ironing it out and working with people. I mean, the common...
Well, just, I'm sorry to interrupt, because I know you're probably going to go down a little bit of a different path, but to even touch on the metrics, right. I mean, I think we promote, I forget what the number is, something like an 86% open rate on text messages and stuff like that. But the bottom line is it's pretty much 100%. I mean, there is not anybody that I know of that doesn't at some point see that message, read it, mark it as, do something, engage with it somehow, see the brand, see who sent it and what was there. It's pretty rare that you get somebody that doesn't at least get to that point. Whether or not they engage with it is a different story, but even those rates are, up in the mid 30% percent. Again, like I said, I mean, we can literally watch the traffic spike from when we send a text message, and going back to a couple weeks ago, whatever whenever that podcast was, but that we talked about measuring your marketing.
Right. Yeah.
It's highly measurable.
Perfect.
Right? I mean, we can embed UTM tracking tags and things like that in every link that we use. We can use URL shorteners and things like that to track click-through rates and purchases and I mean, so it's super easy to
Right.
be able to see that. Yeah, I mean,
It's
there's value there.
It's a relatively new service technology. I mean, it's like the time to do it.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing about it too is kind of going back to email. One of the things I always, when we talk about email marketing with clients, and again going back to direct mail and things like that, one of the problems that we have with email marketing, and it's not really a problem, it's really there to address a lot of the major shortcomings that exist in the email system in general. But there is a lot of regulation around, government regulation around how you can send an email, who you can send it to, what kind of content can be in there. That doesn't mean that everybody follows those.
Right.
Those, really laws. It's not a guideline. It's a law. But there is a lot of regulation there that limits that. On the text marketing side, there's a lot of self-imposed regulation, which I would argue has been far more valuable to people that are using that service the right way, in terms of the carriers themselves, that they do their own spam filtering. And it's a positive and a negative because they don't publish what those guidelines are. They all have their own, and they all have their own. So we have had it in the past, right, where one carrier blocks a message that no other carrier blocked. It got out to everybody on the other carriers, and we don't know why. We don't know what about that message kind of triggered that system. So that stuff does exist, but at the same time, it's also helped keep the spam out of the system. Right. And keeps it so that it is more valuable for those people that are doing it the right way and following those carrier guidelines, to the best of their ability, and making sure that their stuff is going to get not only delivered, but actually read and engaged with, because it's not this massive, spam email box.
Sure. I mean, just to go back to where I was going before with that, just before I lose my train of thought here, trying to figure out whether this is for your company or not, and really the common usage for this, as I mentioned in my first example with Timberland, was coupons. I mean, I want discounts, but there's a lot of different ways that you can use this service for different companies. Natural matches, as we've been dealing with some theaters or concert venues, things like that, to let people know about ticket sales and events, and maybe combine that with some offers and discounts.
It is highly deal driven, right? That's one of the first things we tell everybody is, for the most part, somebody that's going to allow you to be that disruptive is going to want something in return. But there is a place for deals. That doesn't mean that you have to become, the coupon business where everybody knows, well, they're not going to buy from you.
Right.
What Bed Bath & Beyond, I use as the perfect example. Do you know anybody that would ever go to Bed Bath & Beyond without a stack of coupons in their hand?
Yeah.
Why would you? Because all you got to do is wait a little while, and you're going to get 12 of them, and they're going to use them all. And so nobody's going to pay full price at Bed Bath & Beyond, because you know that you don't have to. You know that if you pay full price, you're probably overpaying, because otherwise you wouldn't send me a 5% off or a $5 off coupon once a week if that wasn't just your price. Right. So there is a risk of that, and you want to kind of stay away from that. But to that end, it is highly deal driven. There is an expectation from somebody, like you said, that was your hesitation, right? I want this deal, but I'm not sure I really want to give up what I'm going to give up to get that in return. Ultimately, it was enough for you to say, okay, I'm willing to give that up, and for them to get you on board, and then to realize the value in being on that list. But there is something that they needed to give up in order to convince you of that.
Sure.
And I think that's important for people to remember, for sure.
Yeah. And I think it's up to different businesses to try to decide how this could benefit their company. I mean, there's the coupon side of it, which lends itself to certain types of business immediately when you think about it. But then there's other ways where it's just informative, maybe for a non-for-profit organization, something like that, where they just want to let people know about events they're having or certain outings, and people want to know, and they would utilize that service.
Yeah, and I think the key is value, right?
Yeah.
At some point, you need to figure out what value you offer your customers and what value being on that list would provide to them. And that's different for every business and every type of business. For nonprofit organizations, obviously, it's tremendously different, right? Most of the value people get is by supporting your cause. So using that to give them another way to support your cause or another way to be in touch with what you do and what your cause is. We've talked about with some of our nonprofits, we've come up with the idea of doing like flash donations where, you can say, hey, we have an event coming up this weekend that, typically we're selling tickets for, but for the next half hour, anybody that donates $10 gets entered in a drawing to win tickets to this event. And, doing different, just using it in a different way for people to stay engaged with you, people that, from a nonprofit standpoint, people that again, their value is in supporting your organization, giving them a way to do that. That's just a little different from what you do now and what you've done for the past 20 years, and a way that can keep it fresh and drive different engagements in different ways.
Yeah, maybe bring some younger people on board, a way to do that too. Yeah, I mean, I know we recently spoke with a client about this and talked to, he was a wholesale client, and we were talking to him about ways he could utilize the service, and we talked about maybe doing inventory updates. And the client, had a little bit of trouble wrapping his head around it. Was kind of evaluating whether that would be valuable service to his customers. But these are the things that customers have to that businesses have to think about in terms of how they could utilize this. Different creative ways.
And there's a cost associated with it, right? So it's not that it's free. I mean, it's not
right.
It's not like you're going to do this and say, well, if I can think of a unique way to engage with my customers, it's a way to do that at no cost. But it's a relatively minimal cost. I mean, our service, anywhere from like 1.5 cents, or I think that's the lowest, to 4.5 cents per message and things like that. It's a minimal cost.
Comparable to email services.
Yeah, maybe a little more expensive, but when you look at if you look at the engagement rates and it's really the cost ends up going the opposite way, where it ends up being cheaper based on what you get out of it
for the value.
Yeah. But so there's a cost. So if your use case is a little non-standard, if it's something that's a little different, like what you were talking about, as far as that was a wholesale grower and a plant grower who, they have seasonal stock. I mean, they have stuff that is only in bloom during certain parts of the year, or they have stuff that only gets shipped in from certain parts of the country for certain times during certain times of the year. And it's important that their customers know what's available. And it's every week, they're typically sending out an email or putting something on their website, something that they're trying to keep their customers updated about. Here's what came in this week. Here's what we have.
Yeah.
But to be able to send that in a text message for customers that run their business from the road most of the time, they're on their cell phones 24/7. They're on the road almost all the time. Could add a lot of value, and it's not going to be direct. And this goes back to another episode we did, weeks ago, measuring the effectiveness of your marketing. It's not necessarily a direct marketing campaign in terms of attributing sales to that, that communication method.
Right.
But over time, are you adding value for your clients, and is that going to make them want to continue dealing with you versus one of your competitors? Because, hey, you're right here in my face all the time, and I know when I need to go back and take a look and deliver something to a client, I can just check real quick on my phone and check that text message that you sent me 2 days ago to see if you have that in stock, if that's something that you have available.
Right. Yeah, I think, most importantly, just jumping back again to where we started with all this when we started talking about it, is to hope that people understand that it's really not an invasion on somebody when they're signing up for it. They have to opt in. I mean, it's something they want to find out about it. And I think that's, the most important thing about it is that, you're not going to be, encroaching on somebody's privacy. If they want that information, they're signing up for it.
Right. And it's a great way, for that same reason, to identify true fans, right? I mean, people who are going to basically follow you anywhere, that are going to follow your brand, that are really engaged. I mean, those are the people. I mean, anybody that signs up for those are the people that you want to engage with, that you want to make sure that you keep them happy, that you want, because they're going to spread the word. They're going to, they're the ones that are true fans of your brand, your business, your nonprofit, your personal, whatever it is that you're promoting. Anybody that's willing to give you that kind of consent, that's willing to allow you to be that disruptive of their day, of their, and use up that much of their time whenever you decide you want to use it, is somebody that adds a lot of value to your business.
Right.